I spend the first hour of my courses with an introduction. I tell my students a little about myself, how I got into teaching, and where I got the information I'll be sharing with them in the class. Then it's the students' turn. I go around the room and have the students tell me a little about themselves, mostly how long they've been in policing and if they have any training experience. I'll never forget one gentleman who was sitting close to the front of the classroom. I retired from the state police after 20 years, and then I took a job at the local sheriff's department and worked there for 20 years before I retired from there last year. I'm now working for the sheriff as a civilian in charge of department training. I remember looking at him a little shocked. 40 plus years, 2 retirements, and he was still working in law enforcement? I bet your therapist has a field day when you stop in, I said to him. And he just chuckled and said, I always knew what I was going to do. Why stop? That man had a plan. One that he followed through with and never really had to face the challenges many officers face about what to do after retirement. That transition was easy for him, but for most of you, it's going to be a challenge. Figuring out your next shift after retirement is rarely that easy. It's time to start telling our own stories. I'm Steve Kellums, and welcome to Blue Canary. Jessica Flores served as a police officer and detective in the Kansas City, Missouri area, but was forced to retire early due to medical issues. That left her struggling to find purpose and meaning in the post-law enforcement world. That all stopped one day when she realized she could help other officers find their purpose after law enforcement. That's how Next Shift was founded. Today, Jess runs Next Shift to help coach officers leaving the profession to help them find purpose and community after law enforcement. Jess was gracious enough to sit down and chat with me for a few minutes about her own experiences and Next Shift. Jess, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. I really appreciate it.
Steve, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate you asking me to be on.
So I was looking at topics for retirement and talking about officers retiring and some of the things they're going to have to do in retirement. And when I saw your LinkedIn profile and what you were doing, I knew that you were going to be perfect for this topic. Can we start with you telling us a little bit about your law enforcement career and then what attracted you to law enforcement?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. I feel like the whole LinkedIn thing was scary to put all of that out there. And then it just blossomed into something. And I was like, wow, okay, I guess we're talking about this. We'll take you all the way back to, let's say, 1995. It's kind of crazy to say 30 years ago. I attended my grandfather's funeral, and he was a law enforcement officer. He had just retired 6 months prior and then passed away, like so many other people in retirement from this career. And it was the first death I had ever experienced. And seeing that funeral, seeing the police department come together, he was also a Marine Corps veteran. So we also had Marines there. My uncle was a fire chief. I don't know if he was a chief at the time, but we had firemen there. And it was just something to see that he was part of something bigger than himself. And my 10-year-old brain then definitely did not say the words something bigger than himself, but it was just something that stuck with me. And I was like, wow, that's got to be something. And then over time, the O.J. Simpson case was also that year. What else did we have that year? The Oklahoma City bombing, school shootings had started to be a thing, and you could see it on TV. And every time I would see those things on the news, because my family's very big into watching the news, unfortunately, I would see these officers running toward the danger. And it just, again, it was something that stuck with me, but I didn't really understand it because I was so young. As I got older, I started getting into court TV, and CSI was released, and I was just really drawn to investigations, not so much police work, but investigations, and realizing, wow, there's a lot of people out there who need someone to be their voice. Especially, I was drawn to homicide cases specifically, but they really needed somebody to be a voice for them. And as I got older and as I went to college, I was like, I think that I'm supposed to be that voice for them. And I didn't know why. I still don't know technically why that was what I was drawn to. But man, at 18 years old, first semester of college, I chose to do a ride along with the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, the biggest one in our area. And I fell in love. I was like, I didn't even know I wanted to be a street cop, but here I am in this ride along, and I think this is going to be a blast. But I had to wait several years until I was 21 or at least 20 to apply, which I did. And then started the academy 1 month after I turned 21 and did 4.5 years at that department. before burning out after being shot at and just watching how my department handled that situation. Took about a year off and still felt called to be a cop. I didn't get to, in that first department, complete what I came here to do, which was be that voice for victims. So I went back to another smaller department and did 5 years there before an injury ended up taking my career.
I think it's amazing because you talked about being a part of something huge and bigger
Mhm.
than ourselves. And that really wanting to be a part of something special, I think, draws a lot of law enforcement officers into that space.
For
And
sure.
of course, then later on in life where things happen and you can't do that, that causes a lot of problems.
Yeah, it's I think it's something within all of us. It's something whether we know it or not, whether it's subconscious or not, it is that desire to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And definitely when it's taken, I can attest to that part for sure from you. There's a lot of emotions that you go through and a lot of feelings and a lot of hurt that you go through until maybe one day, if you're lucky, it gets revealed again and you get to redefine your purpose. And that is now what I get to help people do instead of suffering for a few years like I did.
Yeah, I think that's something that I'm really trying to push this season is talk about redefining
Mhm.
the officers' lives after retirement. And of course, as you said, you had an injury. Do you mind sharing that with us and going over that?
Yeah, not at all. So let's see. That second department, I was there for about 5 years. And while I was in the detective unit, I had noticed my dominant hand, so my wrist hand, or my wrist hand, goodness gracious, my wrist and hand on my dominant side had started to kind of become irritated. I would like to say that it was all of the extra writing and all of the extra typing I was doing as a detective versus what I ever did on the road. And I just kind of like brushed it off like most of us do. It's like, well, I'm not going to go out for something stupid like this, blah, blah, blah. Well, a year and a half into being a detective and a couple summers of fishing, bass fishing with my dad, which we did really well. So I was constantly reeling in big ass fish. I realized I got to get this looked at. I had been promoted to sergeant, which we all know that means you get shipped right back to midnight patrol. And I found myself ripping this brace off of my hand on the way to calls so nobody would see that it was an issue. People at the department knew it was an issue, but I didn't want people in public to know that it was an issue. And when that became a problem and I knew I couldn't grab my gun the way I used to, or I couldn't grab a hold of someone like I used to because I had no strength in my hand, I was like, okay, it's finally time. Like, it's been 2 years or so. Like, go get this looked at. I got it looked at. They told me there was a tendon issue that goes down the side of your wrist into your thumb, but it was a quick and easy surgery. You would be good as new in 3 months. And I said, okay, sure. Like, I'm 31 years old. Like, I should, and fairly healthy. Like, I should rebound fairly quickly from this. Let's do it. But unfortunately, 3 months went by, 6 months went by, and I think it was month 8. And after a second opinion, where another doctor said, Jessica, I can go back in there, but if I nick a nerve, which is likely because hands are just so small, you're going to lose all feeling in your hand. So I had to make the decision. Well, no, I don't want to lose all feeling in my hand. I guess I'll just deal with this pain. But that also means I can't grip anyone or a gun. And unfortunately, in this job, you've got to be able to do both of those things. So I had to make the decision, since we could not prove it happened on duty, that I could no longer be an officer and be safe on the street and turn in my paperwork to leave.
That's a huge challenge. And I can relate to that slightly. Now, I retired after 27 and a half years at my agency.
Mhm.
While I do feel like I retired on my own with my own decision. It was a health decision that kind of forced it. I've talked about this before on the show, in which I had some eye issues that could
Oh, yeah.
lead to blindness if the stress continued. And I was like, you know what, I'm done. It's
Yeah.
time to go. But I had been in law enforcement for 30 years, and I was ready to leave anyway. That was just kind of a push out the door. Yours had to be really difficult, knowing that there was still so much of a career there for you.
Oh, it felt like the biggest gut punch. Still to this day, it feels like the biggest gut punch ever. Again, I was only 31 years old when that happened, and I had well, before I was 21. I mean, I started at 21, but at 18 years old, I had planned my life through retirement, which was going to be 52 years old, which sounds crazy, but it's what so many of us do. This was the only career I ever wanted. It's the only one I worked toward. And then in an instant, I mean, it took 8 months, I guess, but in an instant, basically, it was gone. And for that entire 8 months that I was off dealing with different types of physical therapy, occupational therapy, all of these things, I wasn't looking for what was next. In my head, like I knew it was over because I couldn't use my hand, but I refused to admit that at 31 years old, my career in law enforcement was over with just 10 years of service. So I didn't look for that next thing. And then I turned in my papers and was like, oh, well, shit. What do I do now? Like, I've got a whole life left to live. And I mean, that was the start of a very depressive pity party for about the next 2 years. I did take some jobs just to pay the bills because I mean, that's one thing that has to be done. And on 60% disability pay, you can't pay all your bills. So I did take jobs that paid bills, but they were definitely not meaningful. They were definitely not giving me a sense of purpose at all, but they did pay the bills at least.
So you talked a little bit about that depressive time. I mean,
Mhm.
is that where you found yourself wondering, is this the rest of my life?
Yes, I mean, it sounds really crappy that I sat there for that long, but looking back, I'm like, dude, I think it was necessary to get to where I am today. And again, my now husband, we weren't married at the time, but my now husband was also on the job. So it was one of those, I don't want to say resentment because I've never resented him, but it was very tough to like watch him leave for work and then come home. And obviously we would talk about work and I'd be like, "Ugh, but I don't get to do that or this or that." And I was angry. I would say I was angry for a really long time, not at him, just at the situation, at God, at all the things. Sad. It was those feelings of worthlessness when you're applying for jobs that you absolutely know you can do, but the real world, we'll call it, wasn't seeing that value. And one day I was finally like, you know what? I don't even see my value. I'm thinking I'm just a cop. I'm the one sitting here sulking. I'm the one, waiting for someone to come rescue me and save me and like give me a chance. Well, you've got to go out and make that happen. And I think it was about a year and a half into being out, maybe a year. I don't know. My dad had started suffering with medical issues like the ones that had taken my grandpa from us at he was only 61 years old at the time. My dad was like 57 at the time and I was half of his age. I was like, okay, well, if I just keep sitting here like a bump on a log feeling sorry for myself, I'm going to end up just like them. And that's not something I want. So I ended up reaching out to a Beachbody coach that I had followed for a couple years. And of course, had all the excuses of why I couldn't do what she was doing, workout wise or business wise. But I had followed her and I finally reached out and said, I can't do it anymore. Like, can I join your team? I've got to have something to focus on. I've got to have a challenge. I've been sitting on my ass for 2 years. I've got to get these results that you're getting for yourself and your teammates. And so I started this journey. And I tell you, Steve, 90 days later, I was a completely different human being inside and out.
So it wasn't so much a light bulb moment as it was you hit rock bottom.
My rock bottom. And I think so many people will look at so many different people's stories and be like, well, that wasn't that bad, or mine's not that bad. We all have a rock bottom and it looks different for every single person. So, whatever your rock bottom is, when you hit it, you know it, and you have to start climbing out of it. Some people choose to just sit there. I was not going to keep doing that after 2 years of doing it.
I love the name Next Shift. And that was, again, one of the things that attracted me to your LinkedIn profile was that concept of the officers basically continuing as officers, continuing to do the things that they've always done, but in a different format, a different venue, a different style. Can you talk to us about that Next Shift concept and its goals and what you're trying to do with it?
Yeah, for sure. So it came it came one day, I want to say it was March of 2022. I was working at a local security company and again, it was one of those like meaningless, purposeless jobs, but I had met a client through that work and she was this adorable 75-year-old lady. We became friends. We started going to lunches together and one day we were at lunch and she was like, "How's the job going?" and da 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 and I was like, "You know what? I don't really love it. I don't think this is where I'm supposed to be. I feel like there is so much more that I could be doing." And she asked what that was. And I was like, I honestly don't know. Like, I keep being told that I should be a coach of some kind. And I got a taste of that with Beachbody and a couple other direct sales opportunities. But I was like, who would I even talk to? Nothing felt big enough as far as like an group I could help. And she told me about a friend of hers that was using a CEO transition coach. And I just kind of did that dog head tilt to the side thing, was like, what the heck is that? And she explained that this person helps CEOs not be a CEO anymore, helps them learn how to be at home instead of the boardroom and how to communicate with people that aren't your employees. And I go, oh my God, I can help ex cops who lost their career. And that was the light bulb moment for next shift. And I could not get out of that lunch fast enough. I was like, I'm sorry, but I got to go. Finished my workday, ran home. I'm a very visual person. So I got out a sheet of paper and I started writing down every single word that made me think of policing or officers. And all of a sudden, I had written down the word shift. And then next to it, I was like, next shift. Okay, you're just shifting into a new phase of life. Okay, this works. And I also required a lot of external validation at that time. So I sent that out to multiple people I knew, and they're like, oh my God, I love it. I also came up with a questionnaire that I could send out to every cop I knew who had left for whatever reason. And it was, I think at the time, it was only like 5 or 8 questions. And I would send it out. As they started sending them back, I saw, we'll call it market research if you will, but I saw, holy crap, I wasn't the only person who felt this or went through this. There are all of these people also doing this. Or felt this way. I was like, oh my gosh, we're onto something. And so I knew I was onto something. I didn't know exactly what next shift was going to be or turn into. I knew that I had to just start talking about it. And so whether it was going to be me one-on-one coaching or doing a group coaching program or a community or courses, what was it going to be? I didn't know. I did know, and I still know that I want it to be for all first responders eventually. But that's so overwhelming when you look at the big picture that I narrow focus. That's one thing I had learned in my direct sales opportunities to, hey, you were a cop, you can help cops do this. So that's where I started. And that's what I've been building for the past, I can't believe it'll be 3 years this year, but 3 years. And then once it's big enough that I can hire other people that have, the fire and EMS experience, the dispatch experience, the family angle of it. I would love to have coaches in each of those areas and create those resources and communities for each of the branches of first responders. So everyone feels seen and heard.
I was lucky because when I retired, I already kind of had my future career. I had already decided my next shift was going to be teaching. It had become a
Mhm.
big part of what I was doing on the job, and I just carried that with me into retirement. But I think most people that retire have no idea what they're going to do next. What are some of your first steps to figure that out with them?
Yeah, so you are correct. There are a lot of people who have no idea what is next, and it's not even that; it's they don't even know who they are anymore, or who they are outside of the uniform. And that's really been eye opening to me. Just how many people, even the ones with 10 years like I did. I mean, if you give your full identity to this job, it's gonna get you. But we do a lot of internal work. I'm not here just to help you get the next career. I'm here to help you figure out who it is you are and what you want and why. So we do a whole lot of different clarity questions and exercises to figure out the type of person or the type of life you want to live, what you've already done, what skills you actually want to lean into, because we have a ton of skills as cops, but that doesn't mean you have to or can lean into every single one of them. Which roles were your favorite and why? What skills came from those roles? How can we enhance those roles or utilize those roles to figure out what you're going to do next? But things like that, just getting clear. You cannot have chaos and think you're going to move forward. You have to get clarity before you can move forward. And the lack of confidence that so many come out of this field, or at least thinking about the transition, have when they think about life outside of the uniform is crazy to me. But I also went through it, so I understand it. It's just been a while. So I just get to instill some belief back into them and help them gain their confidence that they can do anything they want to do.
So you said great leaders create impact, not just ideas. How does that principle work? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I think everyone has ideas, but very few people will act on them. They will like to blame other people. And if you can stay focused on, again, that bigger than self thing and you become the person that you needed, you're going to create impact. If you forget where you came from, you're just going to be on this mountaintop preaching down at people instead of bringing them with you along this journey with these ideas. And you can have all the ideas in the world, but very few of them will work without other people involved in it.
We've talked about sense of identity and we've talked about purpose. So that's a big mind shift
Hmm.
with officers as they make that transition. What is that biggest challenge for them? What is the biggest mindset shift they have to do when they leave a role like law enforcement and then move into, other roles or the rest of their life even?
They have got to, again, have that sense of self. They have to set their ego aside and they have to be willing to be a beginner again. You are not going to walk out of this career and into the next thing and just be top dog or have the respect that people often associate with the title of law enforcement. And the biggest thing I can suggest to people is not waiting until retirement or you're leaving to figure that out. The sooner you figure out who you are as a person, the better your career will be. And then, therefore, your transition will be smoother.
So, how big a fight do you have getting people to set their ego aside?
Oh, it's huge. Even though I was one of them, it is a struggle and getting one thing I've noticed recently is, I have a ton of conversations and when you ask the why are you leaving law enforcement or wanting to leave law enforcement, it's the typical, blame somebody else. The society, the news, the prosecutor, the admin, the new generation of cop, it is all of these things and nobody is willing to like take that internal like how am I contributing to any of these things? Part the self awareness and the accountability piece. So I'm like, maybe we drop the ego for 1 second. You have a part of this. Stop blaming other people and look inside. If this job no longer aligns with you, or if you came to this job to do one thing and one thing only, you hit that really quickly in your career and you've been doing it for 3 to 5 years and now you have kids and your priorities have shifted, it's okay to just say, I came what I did here to do. This is no longer for me. And I want to move on. You don't have to blame external people just because that sounds easier and it's what we're used to doing. You can just say, this is no longer for me and I'm going to move here.
I wanted to circle back to something that you said, talking about planning for retirement before it happens. And that's one of the big things I've been pushing during these segments in this season. And was the reason I wanted to do this focus this season on retirement anyway, was because far too many officers that I have known have tried to retire and then couldn't for a wide variety of reasons. And all of it was because they never prepared or planned for retirement. It was just one day it was there. And
Mhm.
what are some of the steps that you would recommend people do to make that plan for retirement?
Yeah. Well, the first thing we have to do is realize that this career can be taken from us at any moment and for any reason. So you've got to constantly be thinking about if this were to happen, what would I do? And part of that is, again, getting to know yourself, get very clear on you, yourself, your family, what you want your future to look like, and why you want that. Create a network now. I get so frustrated seeing people show up for one day on social media and make a post and then like maybe it doesn't gain any attraction because it's the first post they've ever made and nobody knows them and then they give up and I'll ask, well, what's your network like in that area you're wanting to go into? And they're like, well, I don't have one. I'm like, well, how do you think you're going to go anywhere? How do you think people are going to find you? So create your network before you need them. Start getting on social media because that's our biggest platforms and talk about things that matter to you. Allow people to get into your sphere and figure out who you are and what you want. Get your hobbies and passions in order. The number of cops I ask, list out 5 of your like hobbies or passions, and they tell me they don't have any. They don't even remember what it's like to be like to have something they want to do. I'm just like, oh my gosh, wow. And I get it. I was lost in this identity as well, but knowing those things will help you know what you need for your next phase. If you know that you want to go do, let's just say, like financial investigations or something like that, do you have the certifications you need for that? If not, use your department to get those things. Do you want to do something like so many cops are transitioning into the mental wellness space? Do you need to go get your master's degree so that you can be in that space? What are the things that you're going to need? Do them now while you're being paid to get them.
Not only just the online and the networking, which is really setting up another career, but what about community? Because we spend our time in that law enforcement space, right? We have the people we're drinking coffee with, they're our best friends one day. But the
Mhm.
moment we retire, they don't want to talk to us anymore, right? Retired cops are like kryptonite to active working cops.
Yeah.
And so, where do they find community?
This is not the answer most people want, but you have to create it. You have to go out there and actively pursue it and find it. And if there's not one that you think you fit into, then create it. There's nothing wrong with reaching out to your HR and being like, "Hey, can I have the list of, the retired cops?" I think most departments have something they do. Just ask, "Can I get a hold of these people?" Attend those like retiree luncheons and things like that. I've talked to several cops who set up like their monthly coffee date or whatever, and they go sit in a coffee shop for hours and just talk to each other, go to your gym or your church, figure out spaces there. If you're wanting to get into speaking or writing books, go online and find communities near you that have events weekly or monthly, whatever it is. I, for one, hold the debrief call once a month, and that is for current and former law enforcement to come together and just, here's who I am, here's where I'm from, this was my law enforcement experience, and this is what brings me to debrief. And a lot of times it is, I miss the camaraderie, and to see both current and former come together and actually share and help and be like, holy cow, I thought I was alone in this, or oh wow, this is an incredible community, or here's this connection you should connect with for this or that. It's been really something to see. It can happen, but you have to put yourself in their rooms. They're not just going to come to you.
Okay, you dove into that one, but I'm not going to let you get away that easy. I want to know about this debrief call. What are
uh,
you actually talking about? What is this? This sounds fantastic. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so it is my absolute favorite call of every single month. It is usually the last Thursday of every month, and I started this. Well, I had this idea for it to be an in-person panel of myself, of someone who had transitioned into the mental health space, of a chaplain, and a spouse who had lost her husband to suicide 3 months after he retired, just to share, the realness of this transition and what can happen, especially if you don't take control of it. And unfortunately, that panel fell apart. So I had to pivot very quickly and was like, okay, I guess I'm going to do a Zoom. So, November of 23, I had my first debrief call, and there were four of us on the call. It was incredible discussion. And then every month since then, it has just grown. There are some months, especially in the summer, where it's not as big, but I would say an average of 8 people show up on the call, again, current and former. And again, I just go around the virtual room. I welcome everybody. Most of them know each other by now and they'll start talking before I get on. But I just go around the room. Hey, so and so, introduce yourself to us. Tell us who you are, where you're from. What are you bringing tonight? What are you needing to get off your chest, whether it's good or bad? What are you needing help with from the group? It is not necessarily transition specific. The last call ended up being that way, but it's just, my idea was, we've got to debrief our life as it happens. We can't wait 20, 25 years to the end of a career and then finally try to dump all of that, especially with people who don't get it around us. So this is an opportunity to come here. You're safe, if you want to say, because you have a screen between you. And so far it has been the most rewarding work I've done. I love that we get to the end of the call, or to like the new person, 15 people in or 8 people in, and they're like, wow, I've been doing this alone my entire life, or the past 2 years I've been struggling with this or that. Like, I've gotten more from this than I have in X time or whatever. And it is just truly, truly amazing to see everybody come together.
Now, this, I assume, is part of the next shift services that you offer.
It is actually a free call. It is open to any current or former law enforcement. It will always be a free call. Yes, I have paid services, but I need there to be something that has zero barrier to entry for this group, because it's hard enough to raise your hand and ask for help. But if you can just click a link and then come on once a month, it's worked out pretty well for people.
Well, we're going to get to back to contact information for you because I want people to know of that and know how to get a hold of that. But we're going to circle back to that as
Yeah.
we get towards the end of this. Right now, I'm interested in that. We're looking at the problems that people face during retirement, but you specifically, and there are a lot of them out there that have been forced into that early retirement. Are there different problems that you've had to face and that those people that are forced into early retirement have to face, as opposed to those of us that made the decision to leave when we were ready?
There's really not. And I do find it kind of astounding. There's so many who are leaving for either physical or mental injury far before their career would typically be over. And it's the same thing as those who are like, no, I plan this. Some people, if they had a really good plan and they moved into something, a lot are moving into something, let's say law enforcement adjacent, they don't seem to have necessarily the issues with identity or purpose, as those who get it cut short. But most of the people I talk to, the identity and the feeling of purpose, both of those things do come together because, like you said, one day you wake up and you're not a cop anymore. And that's kind of like a jarring feeling, especially for those who served, 20, 30 years, maybe even more than that. Like, oh, well, then who am I? And they might have a good job. They might have something that they went to, but that lack of purpose in the work is just, they're not able to redefine that yet.
So if you could provide one piece of advice that would help an officer making that transition from cop life to civilian life, what would it be?
I don't know that it's a one piece thing, but prepare today for what can happen tomorrow and then be willing to be a beginner.
Be ready to be a beginner, be willing to be a beginner. I like that a
Yeah.
lot. Starting over is hard for anybody. And, you set aside that ego early on. I think there are some really important things to take of all the stuff that you've said right now. Jess, if our listeners want to reach out to you, if they want to take some of the services of Next Shift, or if they even want to know more about that debrief call,
Yeah.
how can our listeners get in touch with you?
The best place is LinkedIn for sure. My DMs are always open. Hop in there. There's practically daily content, and there's a link at the top of my page that has resources, whether they're free or paid. The debrief call is on there. You just click, you put your email in, and then every month, the day before debrief, I send out the Zoom link so we can keep it safe. I'm also on Instagram through the Next Shift page. So they can also go to Instagram and find me there, where they can also find my Jess Flores personal page that I only keep to showcase the evolution of holy shit, I found myself again 7.5 years ago to today. They can scroll back and they can see all of the shifts, all of the restarts, all of the being a beginner over and over and over again as I found myself and seeing each layer peel back over the past 7.5 years.
Jess, thank you so much for your time coming on and talking to me. I found it extremely eye-opening, and I think my listeners are going to absolutely love it. So thank you very much.
I hope so, and thank you so much for having me.
And that's the story we have to tell. Thank you for joining. As always, I'm curious what questions you're getting asked. What isn't the news covering? What story needs to be told? Connect with me at bluecanarypodcast@gmail.com.